Hello everyone. A very warm welcome to our webinar with AXELOS on RESILIA, positioning RESILIA for sales success. I'm Connie Tai from the marketing team at ITpreneurs. I will be your host and moderator today. During this live broadcast, you can submit your questions in the chat box on the navigation panel. We'll cover as many as we can during the Q&A discussion at the end of the webinar. Before we continue, I would like to make sure that the audio function is working properly. So I'm going to run a poll. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. And we can continue. So I just want to also explain to you that the slides and the recording of this session will be shared with everyone at the end of the session. So for the benefit of some audience who may not know a lot about ITpreneurs, let me give you a very short introduction of who we are and explain how we can add value to your business. ITpreneurs offers a one-stop shop for training providers to access a wide portfolio of training materials. We have continuously grown our portfolio through strong partnerships with framework owners. For example, as you know, we're very proud to be one of the AXELOS appointed RESILIA courseware providers. Consultants and training providers come to us to easily source training materials and services for their clients. So here is an overview of the portfolio currently represented in our courseware library, and it is growing every month. This includes well-established IT certifications, emerging frameworks, niche offerings, as well as non-accreditation workshop materials. They are available in multiple delivery formats, classroom, as well as e-learning and simulations, as well as in multiple languages. As you can see, we carry the entire AXELOS Global Best Practice portfolio in our library. So in the new ones also, in addition to RESILIA, we also have recently added Prince2 Agile to our library, and by also Q4 with ITO Practitioner. So we are a solution provider to IT training providers and consultants. We provide the content and dedicated services that adds value to your business. We have a customer solutions team and a global service desk that assists our partners around the clock, catering to the needs of the different time zones we serve. So by working with ITpreneurs, utilizing our comprehensive library, meaning you can broaden and deepen your training portfolio while you reduce the overall cost of training content development and maintenance, and reallocate resources to focus on business development, course delivery, and reduce management attention from operational accreditation issues. So in other words, as partners, you have choice. You choose what you wish to use, and we provide you with the components of the training. So before we invite Dan, I would like to find out who are in the audience today. So I'm going to just launch two quick polls. And if you could help us, because also that helps Dan to tailor his conversation today with you. So describe the organization you represent. So some of you are still entering the poll. We're almost there, so I am going to all right. Thank you. I'm going to close the poll and share with you. So the majority of you offer a mix of training and consulting. Thank you. Then we have another question for the audience in relation to the topic of today. So what is your experience with delivering cybersecurity training? Be very interesting for Dan also to know. And we are closing the poll now. And I'm going to share the results. So 70% of you are new to cybersecurity training. All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to hand over to our presenter of today, Dan Cole. Maybe Dan, you can tell us a little bit your job title as Future Portfolio Lead. What does that involve?
Yeah, thanks, Connie, and hello, everyone. So my role at AXELOS is to look at our new areas for best practice, and the first of those that we brought to market is the RESILIA portfolio and our best practice guidance around cyber resilience. So that's my role as the future portfolio lead, to look at what our customers and our end users in the market is requiring guidance on and requiring with assistance with business issues, and help develop new best practice, bringing in experts, bringing together a community to address those needs.
Okay, thank you very much. And on that note, I'm going to change presenter to Dan, so he will present from his computer. And I'll be back at the end of the session for the Q&A, and also with a bit of information how you can get started with us. So I'm going to change the presenter to Dan.
Great, thanks, Connie. And yeah, hello again to everyone on the call today. So today we're going to talk about RESILIA, and more specifically, we're going to talk around how do we position RESILIA correctly with our customers, how do we get their interest as organisations, such that we can turn that into not only turn that into new business, but also give them the satisfaction that we're delivering a good solution for them. So we're pitching into the right place within an organisation. So what I wanted to talk through was these four areas, and these pretty much mirror for anybody who's engaging with customers for a new service. There's probably the types of conversations you're going to have to go through with customers. So what's the problem? Why should organisations care? How do we get their attention? How do we show them that the RESILIA is something that they need to have on their radar? Once we've got some attention, a little bit more around the positioning and how RESILIA can help. So what is it within RESILIA that is going to bring a benefit to them as an organisation? And where is RESILIA different or complementary to other things that an organisation might be doing? And then what I want to finish on is just some highlighting some of the resources that are available to everyone, and some of those key things we can leave as a takeaway, as a call to action for our customers. And there'll be plenty of chance for questions at the end, and any questions that we can't answer, we can come back with. And before I jump into the first slide, I would say that the one thing I want to get over, if there's just one thing through this whole presentation, is positioning within the organisation. Typically what you can find within an organisation is, and you'll see through here when we go through and describe what RESILIA is, you may well find yourself talking to IT, but then being passed to security, who then pass you to risk, who then pass you to HR or L&D, and nobody taking ownership for really how does the organisation become more cyber resilient, and more specifically, who has responsibility for sponsoring that training, for buying that training within an organisation. And to be honest, that's quite similar to cyber resilience generally within organisations. It's an area that's getting a lot more focus, but there's still a lot of gaps in terms of ownership, and it's one of those classic ones that a lot of people are asking a lot of questions, but there's not so many people within an organisation who have the answers, and that's what we want to provide with the RESILIA best practice. we start with, what are the issues within an organisation? Right, in terms of the risks. So, we know the risks are real within organisations. You can look at some of the names that have been plastered up here, some of the names which are plastered over the media. The growing number of attacks is definitely moving this up the corporate agenda, and increasingly board level and senior level management within an organisation are really worried that they are going to be the next one of these. They're going to be the next Sony, the next target, and that pretty much cuts across all areas of the business. Clearly IT are worried because they're the ones who often have to carry the can, but the risks and costs can easily spread into sales and marketing, into finance, into risk and compliance, everywhere across the organisation. And there's plenty of examples, not only the big headline ones, but some of the smaller ones that maybe haven't quite hit the news quite so much. And really, this is a good place to start our conversations with customers around cyber resilience, because ultimately there's going to be two types of organisations: those that have been attacked and don't know about it, and to be honest, those who've been attacked and they don't yet know about it. Increasingly, most organisations and most people in those organisations do accept it's not if they get hit, it's when they get hit, and when they do get hit, what are they going to do about it? And that prompts the question. So just from these examples on the screen, for example, why do some of those examples, you take the likes of Sony, become such a big problem for the company? And why do others go unnoticed by both the media and by customers? And that's not just down to luck. A lot of that is around what actually happens when the attack comes that makes the difference. Is the business set up to respond and recover from that attack? Or are they trying to make up policy and process and procedures on the hoof as they're going through that crisis? And quite clearly, that doesn't happen by accident. That needs planning, that needs the right process, that needs, most importantly, the right skills across all the people within the organisation. And that's where RESILIA comes in, and that's where we can provide some way for those organisations to improve. But it's no good just playing on fear. Fear is obviously an important part of what is driving the corporate agenda, but we need to show more than just that in terms of what real value we can drive within an organisation. And it starts with balance. And balance is a theme that we'll come back to within RESILIA. Balance is something that is really built into the RESILIA guidance, and it's something we should really emphasise when we're talking to customers. It's a theme that gets strong resonance within customers. So you can see on the screen, it's balancing those opportunities and those risks. If you're sitting there as a board director within an organisation, which path do you go down? Do you go down the risk avoidance path because you're worried about those, or do you pursue the opportunities? Well, quite clearly, you can't make it that binary choice. Every organisation has to do both. The risk always is if you try and clamp down and close off those risks, you're going to miss out on the opportunities. But you can't afford to be so gung-ho and just chase the opportunities, because it can all be undone if you get hit some of the risks. So anyway, there's some very useful statistics that apply to pretty much any organisation. If you look on the risk side, for example, 95% of all security incidents involve human error, and that's human error rather than for example, hackers making a determined effort. Most of that occurs as a result of something starting with human error. Sony, a good example of that. Although of course they've never made it public, the thinking is that started with a number of people clicking on things they shouldn't have done, leaving services open by mistake. And that's how an attack starts. That's the crack that enables hackers to wedge themselves into the systems of an organisation and then carry out a much larger attack. So if that's some of the issues, how are we going to deal with it within RESILIA? So this pretty much sums it up. It's a people problem. You can throw all the technology you want at cybersecurity, and you're still going to be open to attack. We know that people are the biggest risk. We know that it only takes one person to mistakenly click on a phishing link within an email, to lose a USB drive with some crucial data on it. It just takes that weakest link within an organization to undo a huge amount of spending on expensive technology. And that's where cyber resilience and its heritage within ITIL can help. Cyber resilience is all around people, process, technology, as with everything within IT. But traditionally, cybersecurity has often relied too much on the technology side of things. Now, one advantage of cybersecurity going up the board agenda and being seen as a really crucial risk that needs to be addressed is it does mean investment is available. We've spoken to plenty of organisations that are intending to increase their spending on cybersecurity. You look at reports from the likes of Gartner, and that confirms the same thing, that more money is being available. But where's that money going to be spent? Traditionally, the easy option would be to have a shopping list of equipment that you think is going to help make you more secure, protect your network, and stop the attack from happening in the first place. But the more enlightened approach, and where a lot of customers are moving to, is that hasn't worked. Therefore, we need to take a different approach. And focusing some, not all, but some of that money and some of that investment on people will give a much better return. And one of the things the reason why it's going to give a better return is a business case is always going to be a lot stronger when it's leveraging existing investment. And that's one of the reasons that the RESILIA is a compelling prospect, because it's built on ITIL. So it's going to reuse a lot of investment an organisation has already made with ITIL. It'll use a lot of the management and the processes and the life cycle. So you're not having to start from scratch. That makes the business case so much easier to get through and to gain that initial interest, rather than proposing a completely new way of working. So what can we do to address that? So this is the real question that a lot of organisations are struggling with. What does good look like? How do we move ourselves from being a potential target to being seen as somebody who's strong, somebody who's resilient? And it's a bit like putting security around your house. It's more likely to put off potential attackers if they can see that you look like somebody who's resilient, well protected, and therefore less of an obvious target. So there's plenty of advice about what has to be put in place. And we'll come on to talk about this later in terms of compliance. You've got things like ISO 27001. In the UK, cyber hygiene guidance from government. And those type of things are spread throughout the world. But that only tells you what you need to do at the bare minimum. What about what good looks like? Most companies are only going to decide to invest if it's mandatory, because it's compliance driven, so therefore they have to invest in something, or it's going to bring them a competitive advantage. So that's where we need to get the positioning of RESILIA right, is that focus on best practice. It's giving you good. It's looking at how can you make cyber resilience something that gives you a competitive advantage in your organisation. And best practice is what's going to give that practical guidance, that guidance within the organisation that's going to give them that advantage. And if we then move on to look at a few examples, so what do those examples look like? It's very well us saying, yes, we can give you best practice, but for example, having the right people and skills to support the business strategy, clearly something that requires everyone across IT to have those skills. IT, service management, and ITIL have always been good at working together in partnership with technology in the business, as we've got one of the other ones. Whereas information security hasn't been, often traditionally seen as being a blocker. So it's how do we weave that into that partnership, and that's again where, coming back to the ITIL approach, we can build upon that. Having a clear and accurate assessment as to the risk reduction effectiveness of your controls. So again, that's what best practice is. It's not just putting in a control, but knowing that it's going to be effective. And are you measuring the impact? Are you going through those continuous improvement loops of taking KPIs as to what you've put in place, not only of the effectiveness of the control in reducing the cybersecurity risk, but the effectiveness of the control in not slowing down business operations. Is it still effective in allowing everybody to get on with what they need to do? This is back to our balance. Is it effective in allowing those opportunities to proceed whilst also controlling some of those risks? And the last one, having an organisation that's focused on managing risk. That's a key part of RESILIA. And having that risk management mindset within everybody, not just within the risk department, is what helps build a resilient organisation, because everybody understands why they need to do certain things, how they can get that balance right, and it's about empowering people to make the right decisions themselves. So now I want to just delve into slightly more depth into a couple of specific examples of how RESILIA can help. So the first one to come to is opportunity and risk. We've mentioned this before, but prevention and detection is one thing, and traditionally where information security is being focused. But correction, that ability to recover, that ability to bounce back once the inevitable attack does happen, that's one of those key parts within the RESILIA framework and within the best practice. And equipping an organisation to be able to do that is one of the balances that they're going to be looking for. Because as a senior management or a board, you don't want to just invest for a theoretical risk. You want to only invest to find that the goalposts have shifted and that the risks have changed. You want to invest to build that flexible organisation that can respond itself to the changing needs, and that's where the balance comes from. So that's one key thing that we'd highlight that gets a strong resonance within organisations, is that concept of balance. Another one, which is a challenge for many organisations and is addressed within RESILIA, is responsibility. So one of the opening questions you can often ask your customers is, who is responsible for cybersecurity? Who's responsible for identifying what their key assets are? Who's responsible for protecting those key assets? And often, if you get an actual honest customer, they may well say, yeah, we're not 100% sure, or it's spread. Or you may well get possibly the worst answer to that is the information security team. And that's part of the issue. That's part of what we need to provide as best practice organisation, is it shouldn't be the information security team. They're just an enabler. They're part of the process. So who are responsible? Well, it starts with everyone. The board and the management really have to set the tone for the rest of the organisation. And that's why we always say within cyber resilience, it's a good idea to make sure you can get some of that buy-in. Ideally start the conversation there, but at least get that senior level buy-in to that change within an organisation. Information owners are critical, and so are the service owners. So within RESILIA, that helps you identify who those people are. Because the information owners are typically, in the past, have been cut out of the loop with information security. It's people like marketing who own a lot of information around the customers, which is very, very valuable information. It's people like finance who hold critical information on the financial health of a company. Both of those two key assets that need to be protected, but often they're not part of the traditional approach to information security. Service management as well, which is why we're so strong on the link with service management. How can you deliver a service management if you don't understand from those information owners what's the right balance between keeping that information secure, making that information available, and providing it to the business. So those basics, confirmation, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which is a key part of information security, but that awareness of that is often too concentrated just within information security teams within an organization. Bottom graphic, a really graphical way of saying resilience and strength comes from the weakest link. And that's what RESILIA does for an organization, is make sure that there are no weak links by training up everybody especially within IT, rather than focusing on a handful of specialists within information security and expecting them to fix the problem. Because once you've got that spread across everybody, you can then move on to one of these other key themes, is knowing what to protect. It would be ridiculously expensive for any organisation to try and protect everything, and just not necessary. So one of the key themes within RESILIA is understanding what your critical information is, and what are your critical services. What's really going to affect the performance of the business if we have problems with it? Because only once you know that can you actually say, well, how do we then put in place a plan that is relevant to those services and information and is proportionate, so we don't overreact, but also we understand we need to have some extra focus on our critical information. And just bring out a good example of that, and something that is a good conversation to have when you're talking to, for example, a head of IT service management. A call comes into the service desk with an incident. It looks like it might be a security incident. But how are the people on the front line in the service desk or even the service manager going to get that priority right between what they might want to do, which is try and bring a service back up so that they can hit their SLAs around availability, whereas on the other hand, what might be the best thing from a security perspective is to not bring it up straight away, because if you've still got vulnerabilities left, it's just going to make a bad situation potentially even worse. And then, depending on the information, what about if you need to take evidence, forensics for post-incident analysis? So equipping those people on the front line who've got to make that call on incident management as to what to do with that incident is much, much easier if they both understand service management and they understand cyber resilience. And that's why a lot of our talk within RESILIA, and you'll see within the training, is around collaboration and having those broader skills across the business. So one other thing we wanted to touch on, because a lot of the time this ends up being a block with organisations and a common objection, is that overlap between best practice on the one hand and compliance. So let's face it, compliance will always be an organisation's higher priority. If you're mandated to do something by regulations in your industry or by jurisdictional law, you have to do it. There's no two ways about that. So if you're having to do it, if you're having to put in, say, 27001, or you're taking credit card payments that you need PCI DSS, why would you then look to invest beyond that into something like RESILIA? And if you're already compliant, why do you need RESILIA? So I think there's two answers to that. The first one is, you think right back to the beginning of the presentation today, where we highlighted some of the organisations that have been attacked. If you look at them, all of those were compliant with the right regulations. They had PCI DSS. They had 27001. But Sony, Target, Carphone Warehouse, it didn't stop them from being compromised, and it didn't stop them from suffering significant damage, both financially, operationally, and to their reputation. So yes, you need compliance, but compliance does not equal security. This comes back to positioning best practice right as best practice. It's good. It's not the bare minimum. So that's why you need to move beyond compliance. But also, RESILIA can actually help with compliance in the first place, as well as taking it to the next level and making it a real benefit to an organisation. Because often a compliance standard will just tell you what you need to have in place. And we take an example of that. So PCI DSS, if you're an organisation that is taking credit card payments from customers, you know you've got to store that information, even if only temporarily. And you look at the PCI standards, you know you're going to have to encrypt that information at rest. So if you're storing it on a database, you know you've got to encrypt that database. But how are you actually going to manage that process? How are you actually going to put in place that as a service? What about change management when you have software patches to be rolled out? What about requests for access to that data and going through the access fulfillment process? The requirement itself from the compliance standard just says you have to have something in place. What RESILIA does is it gives you more of a practical framework in how you're going to manage those controls that enable compliance with the business. Not only so you can be efficient, but also so you can improve the security and resilience within an organisation. So are you giving access to that information to the right people, for example? So a good example there, generally, of how RESILIA, and I've also highlighted ITpreneurs too, because they can help as well, can provide that enabling framework that moves organisations towards more effective compliance. So I wanted to move on now, just talk a little bit more around positioning. Because hopefully we've seen how RESILIA can help organisations and what some of their challenges are that we're looking to address. Well, where should we go after? Where's the greatest need, and how do we make sure we get the positioning right? So we look at target sectors to go after. Pretty much every organisation these days has some form of information, and therefore has at least a basic level set of requirements. But having said that, of course, some organisations are much more reliant on information. Some organisations are much larger, so they've got more IT. And typically, of course, those are going to be a more obvious prospect. They will typically be the organisations as well that have liked to spend more money on adopting ITIL. So IT, telecoms, utilities, federal and government, energy, retail, education, healthcare, all key focus areas that we can provide a solution to. Whereas it's worth noting, if you're going to go and talk to real estate, to construction, to agriculture type customers, it's not to say they're not a target, but clearly they'll have smaller needs, and also they'll have a much lower level of understanding, so it's pitching that understanding right. Whereas you go up to the top, and defence and financial services are very cyber mature, and again, they are looking for solutions still, but we need to ensure that the level of conversation we're having with those clients reflects their deep understanding of what they face within their threat landscape. And then typically in terms of the buyers and influencers within those organisations, our traditional buyers of head of IT, IT director, CIO definitely still apply. But there's also other areas that we should consider specifically for RESILIA. Yes, the head of security or chief information security officer, and especially risk and compliance. Those areas will have a strong influence on decision to adopt RESILIA, as well as the existing areas. And if I delve down one more level, just to clarify where we should position, especially the foundation and practitioner certification training within an organisation. I think the biggest mistake we could think about is thinking this is a purely an information security certification. So this is not an alternative to CISSP, for example. So the foundation very much aims squarely at the complete IT operations. So obviously service operations, so typical people that might well have done ITIL Foundation, but also the broader area like IT development, including DevOps, architects, business analysts, project managers. Those are crucial areas where IT touches the rest of the business, and therefore where those needs for cyber resilience need to be built in from the start. We've highlighted some areas of business. Thinking back to the start, those information owners are key people that we need to be on board with the message around RESILIA. let's not to forget the information security area. So typically the content within Foundation and Practitioner around technical controls will be fairly familiar to anybody in information security. What they are going to learn, though, is some of that management and some of that process work. So they know the controls they need to put in place, but how can they work better with the rest of the business to make those controls effective, streamlined, and just become part of business as usual, rather than everything being a real uphill struggle to bring into the business. And then specifically from a, I guess from an ATO perspective as well, if you've got existing security certifications, or when you're talking to customers who've got people with existing security certifications, where does RESILIA fit here? So we put it on a graph to show where those differences are. So RESILIA is very much aimed at a general audience within IT. So we've mentioned IT service management and the likes, rather than those information security specialists. And it has a management and business focus. So of course it covers what you need to know around the technical side, but it is very much process focused and around delivering business benefits. So put that into context with some of the other certifications that the customers might be asking about, or you might be offering yourselves. Something like CISSP goes into a lot more technical detail because it's aimed at those specialists within information security. And then of course you've got the likes of the IT vendors courses, which again are often focused around specific bits of technology. So it's important to note how RESILIA can be complementary to certifications that people within customers might already have, rather than being a competitor. So finally, I want to just we're drawing towards the end, just focus on just a couple of quick tidbits in terms of what's in the certified training. So I think when you're engaging with customers, clearly this is part of the end part of the discussion around drilling into that. And there's plenty of product information available on the web, and Connie will talk to you about what other resources are available. But the certified training, as with all AXELOS best practice, is based on that core guidance in the best practice book. And it's all around two core areas. What are those areas of controls we need to think about? How do we align that within IT operations and within the rest of the business? So Foundation is giving you that understanding of how those decisions can have a good impact on cyber resilience. And Practitioner is taking that same content and talking you through and teaching you those practical skills of how you're actually going to apply it. So a lot of these concepts that we've talked about, like balance of risk, balance of cost and operational benefits, gives you the skills to be able to apply that. And again, for those of you who are a bit familiar with RESILIA will know it's part of a broader solution, a broader portfolio. So the Foundation and Practitioner training is that detailed training for people within the IT team, but there is the wider of individual awareness, learning and know-how which applies for the wider organisation, and that's probably a subject for another day. So finally, I just wanted to finish off with call to action and resources. So hopefully we've gone through quite a few messages that will get some good interest with your customers. There are extra pieces of information we can leave them with that they can go away and look at, and they will explain things slightly further. So one area we focused on is trying to get that senior level interest, and what information can we have there. So AXELOS has the CREATE team. So CREATE stands for Cyber Resilience Executive Action Team. These are a number of very senior and well-respected experts in cyber resilience, including, for example, the interim Chief Security Officer who was brought in to Target to deal with the aftermath of their breach. They provided input into the best practice, and on the AXELOS website there's some interviews with them and some interesting blogs that they've written. One that has been really successful that I would definitely encourage you to use is Whaling for Beginners. So Whaling for Beginners is a fictional story that we've had written. You can download it, the first part from the website. There is there's also a video of the first chapters as well, and that's aimed at those senior level audience, and it goes through and talks you through, and I won't spoil the story for you, how an organisation can so easily be undone by its senior level people not paying attention to security. And then in terms of the usual area of getting buy-in within IT management, we've got the obvious areas of product information, blogs and FAQs. But I would draw your attention specifically to two white papers that are very useful. So cyber resilience and IT service management working together. We've talked a lot about collaboration, how you spread those skills. That gives you a few really good examples, short little white paper that a head of service delivery or a vice president of service delivery would find interesting reading. And also building cyber resilience from the board down, again emphasising those points we've talked about in terms of ownership and responsibility. So most of that information available on the AXELOS website. So that pretty much brings me to the conclusion of what I wanted to say today in terms of where to position RESILIA. And hopefully that's given you some good information around how you should maybe have some of those conversations, around what some of the challenges that your customers are likely to face and how to engage with them with a meaningful conversation. But I guess now we throw it open to yourselves for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. First, I'm going to change back the presenter so it moves to my screen. And so before we move to the questions, just want to give the audience some information how you can get started with ITpreneurs. So as mentioned at the beginning, we are one of the appointed RESILIA courseware provider, and we offer very high quality courseware for RESILIA. And we work with our lead author, who is also one of the authors of the RESILIA Cybersecurity Best Practice. And our role is to enable you to succeed. So we are not a training company, so we do not offer training. So we don't compete with our partners. We offer a bridge to make working in the IT training ecosystem easier for everyone involved, as mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. So this is our RESILIA portfolio. So we already released our foundation courseware for classroom, virtual classroom, as well recently the practitioner classroom, virtual classroom. And in addition to that, our RESILIA Foundation e-learning will be available very soon. So for your customers, if they are looking for maybe a fast-track approach to the training and certification, that could be an option. So this is just a picture we draw based on the AXELOS operating model for RESILIA. It comes from the operating brochure. And just to explain to you that for RESILIA, you can work with us as an ATO, but also as an affiliate. And maybe interesting information for the audience. We have been running Train the Trainer virtual sessions on RESILIA Foundation, and since this week, actually, we also offer the RESILIA Practitioner at these dates here. So these sessions are meant for instructors who are planning to utilize our courseware to deliver the training. So these sessions will go through all the training components, the syllabus, and also some of the assignments and scenarios within our courseware, and advised by the master trainer how you can utilize that effectively. And I also want to mention AXELOS already announced that the free RESILIA Trainer exams will be extended until the end of October. So these dates are published on our website, these Train the Trainer sessions. So you can go to itpreneurs.com/TTT for more information, and there is a form for you to submit if you're interested to participate, and a member from our partner development team will get in touch with you. So if you are not a partner yet, you can become one easily. At ITpreneurs, Partners Matter. Our business model is business to partners. So you can contact us on info@itpreneurs.com. So let's get to the questions and answer sessions. We really invite you to submit your questions for Dan to help you. So we have already one question coming in. So hi Dan, thank you for this presentation. Do you think Hillary Clinton's staff should have received RESILIA training and advise her not to use her personal email for confidential government matters?
Yes. I think, and that's a classic example of where senior level people, so joking aside, senior level people feel that they are above policy, and that's why getting that senior level buy-in, and I would, anybody in that situation you come across, point them towards the Whaling for Beginners book, because that's exactly that scenario that describes how somebody becomes undone by thinking that they were bigger than the problem, and that the policies only apply to their staff and not to them.
Okay, thank you. Then we have a couple of questions relating to RESILIA and ISO 27000. What is the market differentiation of RESILIA than others? In other words, what will make customers choose RESILIA instead of other security courses? You've gone through that, I think, in your presentation, but maybe some further advice for Mohammed, who raised this question here?
Yes, so the key thing I would say there is we know that, like I mentioned earlier, we know the organisations have got to go through the compliance. So it's all about making it complementary. So RESILIA, it should not be a do we do RESILIA or do we do something else. It's actually RESILIA can help you do those other things. It can help you get to 27001, for example, compliance a lot more easily, and to not have all the cost every year when you go through the audits, find you need to have a whole lot of improvement actions, and you're constantly reinventing it each year. You put RESILIA in place, then actually it's going to mean each year you know you're doing the right thing, so that getting that compliance, getting those audits for 27001, for example, becomes just so much easier.
Okay, thank you. Just now, also in your presentation, you talk about speaking with very senior people in organization about RESILIA training. So would you recommend that it is always, an advantage if, training providers get to speak with the very senior people with broad, maybe functional responsibilities in organization?
Yes, absolutely. I think if you can engage at the CIO, so Chief Information Officer, or if they've got it, CISO, so Chief Information Security Officer, that's an ideal place to be engaged, because you can get that person to help sponsor it up to the board and to help drive it down across the organisation. Being realistic, of course, everybody would love to get into that level, so I'm sure it can be a struggle. But even within IT, it's important to make sure you're often speaking at a VP or a director level. If you are just talking to the practitioners, I think RESILIA is very much one of those things that will be driven by the organisation rather than a practitioner turning around and saying it's something I think I have to have of my own accord. RESILIA definitely will be an organisation sell rather than being a sell to individuals. For example, Prince 2 could be much more of a sell to an individual as a way to improve their career prospects. RESILIA is more of an organisational sell.
Okay, thank you. A question. I just passed the RESILIA Foundation. What else do I need to start to offer the foundation class?
So well done. Have you framed your certificate? The trainer requirements are, if you've already got an existing security certification, then you'll be good to go. If you haven't, then you'll need to pass the practitioner as well. So practitioner exams are now available for trainers, like Connie said, they're free till the end of October from all of the exam institutes. So just go past that as well if you need to, and then you're all good to go.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, yeah. So let me see if there are further questions in relation to the topic. So this person said he's also planning to take the practitioner exam, so which is great.
Okay, excellent. Good.
Will CISSP be deemed as an existing security certification?
Yes, absolutely. So there are the exam institutes have got a list. If you're in any doubt, then either ask the exam institute and they can request it, or I'm quite happy for anybody to come directly to me and ask whether it's likely to be something. So things like CISSP, things like CompTIA, Security Plus, and then in individual countries, so in the UK, for example, there's a scheme called CLASS, which is run by GCHQ. So there is quite a long list, and it's not an exhaustive list. So if you've got a security certification and you're unsure whether it's going to be right or not, just put it forward to the EI, and yeah, they can go through, and if necessary, we can make a decision on that.
Okay. Another question here, will there be other white papers released by AXELOS in the near future in relation to RESILIA?
Yes, absolutely. So I can't remember off the top of my head what the title of the next one is, but yes, we have got a range of white papers identified for both this year, and also we are starting to look ahead. Yeah, my job title is Future Portfolio Lead, so it will never stand still. I'm already looking at where do we take it next year. So there'll be some exciting developments where we start looking at a bit more detail about specific roles, about different industries, and things like that. So expect to see some white papers reflecting some of that coming out later on this year and into next.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. Is it necessary to have ITIL or Prince2 certification prior to the RESILIA certification?
No. So we did debate that, interestingly, but very much the answer is no, because people who might want to come on this course would be, say, let's take a business analyst. They probably know what ITIL is, but they certainly don't have that foundation level of understanding. So within the RESILIA Foundation course, it does give a bit of an intro into what ITIL is. It gives an introduction into the general concept of life cycles before then delving into the RESILIA life cycles. So of course, somebody who's done ITIL will find that familiar, but it's absolutely not a prerequisite to have that knowledge.
Okay, all right, thanks. Yeah, so question in relation to the slides of today. So it will be made available to all of you who have attended the session. I guess there are no more questions for now. So I would like to thank you, Dan, again, for this great session. We got actually also great feedback from the audience. They all find it very informative, very useful. So come back more often then and give us more tips and tricks how to be successful in taking RESILIA to the market. So for the yeah, so that's great. So also everyone, thank you for your presence today. I hope you really enjoyed this session. So we'd love to hear what you thought of today's webinar before you go. So when we close the webinar, there will be a quick survey. And I promise it's super fast, but we want to hear from you. Also suggestions for topics for future webinars. Thanks again, Dan and everyone, for today. And we hope to see some of you back at the RESILIA Practitioner TTT if you're an instructor, or other events we are organizing for you. So thank you everyone, and goodbye.